In the spring of 1917, the sky over the Western Front wasn't just a battlefield. It was a slaughterhouse. For the pilots of the Royal Flying Corps, the mathematics of survival had reached a terminal zero. The average life expectancy of a new pilot was just 17.5 flying hours. The Germans owned the air. Their Albatros D-series fighters were faster, more heavily armed, and led by predators like Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron. April 1941 became known as Bloody April, a month where the British lost 245 aircraft and over 300 men. The RFC was flying outdated kites made of wood and fabric against a professional, synchronized German war machine. The British were desperate for a miracle. They needed a machine that could turn the tide. What they got was the Sopwith Camel. It was the deadliest Allied fighter of World War I, credited with 1,294 kills. But it carried a dark secret. Before it could kill the enemy, it usually tried to kill the pilot. This is the story of the vicious miracle, the plane that won the war but refused to be tamed. The Sopwith Camel didn't look like a monster. It was a direct descendant of the gentle Sopwith pup, but designer Herbert Smith performed a radical act of engineering aggression. He took the engine, the fuel, the twin Vickers machine guns, and the pilot, and he packed them all into the first 7 feet of the fuselage. This concentrated 90% of the aircraft's weight in a tiny space at the front. It gave the plane a hump over the gun breeches, the feature that gave it the name the Camel. On paper, this was a disaster. It moved the center of gravity so far forward that the plane became unstable. But in a dogfight, instability is a weapon. Most planes of the era were stable, meaning they wanted to stay in level flight. The Camel was a system error. It wanted to do anything but stay level. It was twitchy, sensitive, and ready to snap into a maneuver before the pilot even finished the thought. If you want to understand the madness of the Camel, you have to understand the Clerget rotary engine. In a modern plane, the cylinders are stationary and only the propeller spins. In a rotary engine, the entire engine spins with the propeller. This created a massive, violent gyroscopic force. When a Camel pilot tried to turn left, the engine's torque fought against him. The nose would rise, the controls would feel sluggish, and the turn would be wide and slow. But if he turned right, the engine's torque would snap the nose down, and the plane would whip around with a speed that defied the laws of physics. Elite pilots learned a cheat code for the sky. If you needed to make a 90-degree left turn, you didn't turn left. You made a 270-degree right turn. It was faster, tighter, and it would put you directly on the tail of a confused German pilot who thought you were still struggling with the torque. But there was a price for this agility. To a novice, the Camel was a traitor. During takeoff, if a pilot gave it too much throttle, the gyroscopic force would pull the plane violently into the ground before the wheels even left the grass. If he stalled at altitude, the heavy nose would pull the plane into a flat spin that was mathematically impossible to recover from. The statistics of horror. More pilots were killed training on the Sopwith Camel than were shot down by the Germans. It was a selection tool disguised as an airplane. If you survived your first 10 hours in a Camel, you were an ace. If you didn't, you were just another statistic in the boneyard. The RFC even had to mutilate the design, creating a dual-control version with a smaller fuel tank just to stop the appalling number of accidents. The pilots had a saying, "The Camel offers you a Victoria Cross, a Red Cross, or a wooden cross." There was no middle ground. In June 1917, the Camel finally reached the front lines. The Germans were still basking in the glory of Bloody April, assuming the British were still flying easy prey. Then they met Flight Commander Alexander MacDonald Shook. On June 5th, Shook encountered 15 enemy aircraft off the Belgian coast. In any other plane, he would have been a ghost. But Shook understood the vices of the Camel. He used the right-hand snap turns to dance through the formation, downing an Albatros D3 and a German two-seater in minutes. The reversal was instantaneous. By July, the Camel was everywhere. It wasn't just a dogfighter, it was a predator. Major William George Barker, Canada's most decorated hero, used a single Camel to score 46 victories. That specific airframe became the deadliest single aircraft in the history of the war. The camel's versatility was its final outlier trait. When German Gotha and Zeppelin bombers began raiding London at night, the camel was adapted into a night fighter. Engineers moved the twin machine guns to the top wing to prevent the muzzle flashes from blinding the pilot in the dark. These night camels scored the heaviest losses ever sustained by German bombers in a single night, destroying 3 Gothas and a Zeppelin Staaken in May 1918. Then came the ship's camel. They gave it shorter wings and a removable tail so it could be launched from tiny platforms on the decks of battleships. In 1918, a camel launched from a towed barge intercepted and destroyed a German Zeppelin over the sea, a feat that proved no distance was safe from the camel's reach. By mid-1918, the camel was technically outclassed by newer German designs like the Fokker D7. It was slow at high altitudes, and its engine was becoming a relic. But the camel refused to die. It was reassigned to ground attack. Pilots would dive at 200 miles per hour, strafing German trenches and supply lines with their twin Vickers. It was a high-risk, high-adrenaline role that only a camel pilot could love. When the armistice was signed in November 1918, the Sopwith Camel was the most successful Allied fighter of the war, with 1,294 confirmed kills. It had stayed in the fight until the very last second. The Sopwith Camel remains a warning to modern engineering. It proves that a perfectly balanced machine isn't always the best weapon. Sometimes, you need a machine that is unstable, vicious, and a little bit insane. You need a machine that fights the pilot as hard as it fights the enemy. Because in the hands of a master, a traitor is just a legend waiting to happen. If the story of the killer with the hump changed how you see the history of WWI aviation, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm that real, gritty history deserves to be seen. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We decode the most incredible military outliers every single week. What would you choose? The gentle pup that's safe to fly? Or the vicious camel that gives you the most kills? Let's talk in the comments below. We read every single one.